The icy wind cut through Lyralee's thin servant's dress as she pressed herself against the frozen tree bark, her breath forming desperate clouds in the midnight air. Behind her, the howls grew closer. Not just any wolves, but the ferals, the ones who'd lost their humanity completely to the beast within. "Please, please, please," she whispered, clutching the stolen herbs against her chest. Medicine for Nana Mirin, the only person in the Blood Moon pack who'd ever shown her kindness. Worth dying for, perhaps, but she hadn't expected to be caught outside the territory borders after curfew. A massive gray wolf burst through the undergrowth, foam dripping from its muzzle, eyes glazed with madness. Lyralee ran, her bare feet bleeding against the frozen ground, her omega status meaning she couldn't shift. She was wolfless, packless, nothing but a servant who cleaned floors and endured beatings. The feral lunged, its claws raked across her back, tearing through fabric and flesh. She screamed, falling hard into the snow, the herbs scattering like forgotten dreams. The wolf pinned her, its rancid breath hot against her face. This was it. Death at 17, just days before her 18th birthday, unmourned, unknown, her body another casualty of the harsh winter. "Mine to kill, not yours." The voice rumbled like thunder through the clearing. The feral wolf whimpered, immediately releasing her, backing away with its tail between its legs. Lyralee couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as she watched the massive black wolf emerge from the shadows, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen, with eyes that burned crimson in the darkness. The savage alpha, Kieran Blackthorn, the feral wolves scattered without a fight, their madness no match for their terror of him. Stories said he'd killed his own father at 15, that he'd slaughtered 100 enemies in a single battle, that he felt nothing but rage and bloodlust. The most feared alpha in all 7 territories. He shifted, and Lyralee squeezed her eyes shut, her body trembling. The sound of bones breaking and reforming made her stomach turn. When human footsteps approached, she tried to crawl away, her back screaming in agony. "Stop moving." His command froze her in place, the alpha power in his voice undeniable even to a wolfless omega. "You're bleeding out." She felt him kneel beside her, and then, impossibly, gentle hands examined her wounds. His touch sent electricity through her skin, which made no sense. She was nobody. He was him. "These aren't just from the ferals," he said quietly, his fingers tracing older wounds. "These scars." "Don't," Lyralee gasped, trying to pull away, to hide what the torn dress now revealed. The intricate pattern of scars across her back, her arms, her shoulders, years of torture carved into her skin like a twisted artwork. "Please, don't look at them." But it was too late. She heard his sharp intake of breath, felt his hands still against her skin. The scars told a story she'd never wanted anyone to read, especially not him. "Who did this to you?" The question came out as a growl, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with his fury. "It doesn't matter," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'm just a servant. I'm nobody." He moved so fast she didn't see it coming. One moment she was on the ground, the next she was in his arms, pressed against his chest. He was burning hot despite the winter cold, and he smelled like pine forests and thunderstorms. "You belong to me now," he growled against her ear, and she felt the possession in those words like chains wrapping around her soul. "No one touches what belongs to me." "You don't even know my name," she said weakly, her consciousness fading from blood loss and shock. "Lyralee," he said, surprising her, "the servant girl who sings to the morning birds and leaves food for the stray cats. The one who reads stolen books by candlelight and draws flowers in the frost on windows. How do you—" "I know everything that happens in my territory." His arms tightened around her. "Including who's been hurting you." including why you have those scars. Terror shot through her. If he knew, if he'd seen. Alpha Blackthorn, a new voice called out. His beta, Maxime, emerged from the trees with several pack warriors. They all stopped dead at the sight of their alpha holding a bleeding servant girl like she was made of spun glass. Summon the healer to my private chambers, Kieran commanded, standing with her still in his arms. Now. Your chambers? Maxim couldn't hide his shock. But the lunar gathering starts tomorrow. The allied packs are arriving for you to choose your Luna. Did I stutter? The beta bowed his head immediately. No, Alpha. As Kieran carried her toward the Blood Moon Pack's fortress, Lyralee's vision blurred. But just before she lost consciousness, she heard him whisper something that made no sense. 23 scars. One for each year of life he planned to steal from you. The darkness claimed her before she could ask what he meant. Lyralee woke to silk sheets and the scent of healing sage. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. She'd never felt anything softer than rough wool in her entire life. Then the memories crashed back. Ferals, blood, those burning eyes, and Alpha Blackthorn's impossible words. Don't move. An elderly woman's voice, kind but firm. Those wounds need at least another day to heal properly. Healer Thessaly sat beside the massive bed, her silver hair gleaming in the firelight. But there was something else about her, a depth to her gaze, as if she saw more than just the physical world. Lyralee had only seen her from a distance before. The pack's most revered healer didn't waste time on servants. Where am I? Though she already knew. The dark stone walls, the weapons displayed like art, the massive wolf pelt rug. This was the Alpha's private chamber, where no one except his beta was allowed. Exactly where he wants you. Thessaly's eyes were knowing. That young man hasn't left your side for 2 days except when I literally forced him out to deal with the arriving packs. 2 days? Lyralee shot up, immediately regretting it as pain lanced through her back. Nana Mirren. She needs her medicine. Already taken care of. The Alpha sent his personal healers to tend to her. Thessaly gently pushed her back down. She's recovering well and asking about you. That woman has more strength than she shows. There's an old power in her bones. Sleeping but present. The observation struck Lyralee as odd, but before she could ask, the door opened. He walked in, all lethal grace and barely contained power. In daylight, Kieran Blackthorn was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, jaw-length black hair, those infamous eyes that marked him as having alpha blood so pure it was almost primordial. The other servants whispered he was cursed, that his wolf was more demon than animal. Leave us, he commanded Thessaly, though his eyes never left Lyralee. The healer squeezed Lyralee's hand reassuringly before departing. But as she passed the Alpha, she murmured something too low for Lyralee to hear. Whatever it was made him stiffen slightly. You're awake. He approached slowly like she was a spooked animal. How's the pain? Why am I here? The question burst out before she could stop it. The lunar gathering. You're supposed to be choosing a Luna from the Allied Pack's daughters. Princess Celestara of Silvercrest, Lady Ravenna of Shadowfen. You know their names? Heat flooded her cheeks. Everyone talks about it. How you'll finally take a bride, unite the territories through marriage. She pulled the silk sheet higher, desperately aware she was wearing only a healing gown. I should go. If someone finds out you have a servant in your chambers, let them find out. He sat on the bed's edge and her heart nearly stopped. This close, she could see flecks of gold in those crimson irises. Tell me about the scars, Lyralee. They're nothing. 23 precise cuts, ritual scarification, dark magic. His voice dropped dangerously. I've only seen marks like that once before, on trafficking victims from the shadow market. Her blood turned to ice. "You're wrong. I'm never wrong." His hand moved toward her face and she flinched. He froze, something flickering across his features. "Hurt? You think I'd strike you?" "Everyone strikes me." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Finally, he stood, moving to the window that overlooked the pack grounds. Below, she could see elaborate pavilions being erected, silk banners in a dozen pack colors. "My mother was an Omega," he said suddenly, "wolfless, like you. My father's true mate. The pack elders said it would weaken the bloodline, that he should reject her and take a strong Luna instead." Lyra Lee had never heard this story. The previous alpha's death was shrouded in mystery and blood. He kept her secret for years, hidden away, until the elders discovered her and decided she was a threat to the pack's strength. His hands clenched into fists. "They killed her when I was 15. Made it look like rogues." "That's when you killed them all?" "Yes." He turned back to her, and his eyes were burning. "My father, the elders, anyone who'd touched her. They called me savage for it. Monster. Demon." A bitter smile touched his lips. "They weren't wrong." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to the gathering tonight." "What?" She nearly laughed at the absurdity. "I'm a servant." "You're my personal guest." He moved back to the bed, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. "Unless you prefer I announce you're my mate?" The world tilted. We're not. Your scent has been driving me insane for 3 years, little wolf. Did you think I didn't notice? Every time you cleaned the throne room, every time you served at packed dinners, your honeysuckle and rain scent nearly brought my wolf to the surface. But I'm wolfless. I can't be anyone's mate. Can't you? His thumb brushed her cheek, and electricity shot through her entire body. Tell me you don't feel it. The pull. The need. She couldn't lie. Not when her skin was on fire from just that simple touch. But she could deflect. The scars. Show you survived something that should have killed you. His gaze traced them where they peaked above the gown's neckline. Just like I survived. We match, you and I. A knock interrupted them. "Alpha?" Maxime's voice called. "Princess Celestara has arrived. She's insisting on seeing you." Kieran's expression darkened. "I'll be there shortly." As his footsteps faded, he looked back at Lyra Lie. "Rest. Tonight, everything changes." "Wait," she called out as he reached the door. "In 3 days is the winter solstice." "My 18th birthday." He paused. "I know." "How could you know that?" His smile was enigmatic. "The same way I know those scars were meant to be completed by then. The same way I know someone's been hunting you for 10 years. He left before she could ask more, but his final words echoed. "The same way I know Nana Mirren isn't what she seems." The servant quarters erupted in chaos when Lyra Lie entered that evening. Girls who'd ignored her for years suddenly surrounded her, eyes wide with a mixture of envy and disbelief. The Alpha's personal chambers. Mira, the head servant's daughter, hissed, "Do you know what people are saying?" "That she's warming his bed," Katarin sneered, though her eyes betrayed her jealousy. "The savage Alpha's pet Omega." Before Lyra Lie could respond, the door flew open. 3 pack warriors entered, carrying elaborate boxes. "From the Alpha," the lead warrior announced, setting them on Lirale's small cot. "You're to be ready within the hour." They left, and silence descended. Inside the boxes lay a gown of midnight blue silk that seemed to hold starlight in its weave, silver heels delicate as frost, and a note in bold handwriting. "Wear your scars with pride. Let them see you as I do. -K. You can't seriously be going to the gathering," Mira said. Do you know what Princess Celestara does to servants who get in her way? Lyrelei did know. She'd heard the stories of the Silvercrest princess's cruelty, her ice magic that could freeze blood in your veins. But Kieran's words echoed, "You belong to me now." An hour later, she stood at the Great Hall's entrance, her scars partially visible through the gown's strategic cutouts, a deliberate choice that made her want to run. The silk clung to her too thin frame, marking her as what she was, a servant playing dress-up. "Breathe." Maxime appeared beside her, surprisingly kind. "He wouldn't throw you to the wolves without protection." "Isn't that exactly what he's doing?" The beta's lips twitched. "You have no idea what you are to him, do you? Or what you are, period." Before she could ask, the massive doors opened. The great hall was transformed. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across hundreds of guests. Alphas, betas, and their daughters from 7 territories, all here for one reason: to win Kieran Blackthorn's hand. He stood at the hall's far end, dressed in black leather and silver, looking like a dark god among mortals. Their eyes met across the crowd, and that electric pull nearly brought her to her knees. "Who is that?" A melodious voice dripped honey and poison. Princess Celestara of Silvercrest glided forward, her white gown making her look like an ice sculpture come to life. Her pale blue eyes fixed on Lyrelei with predatory interest. "No one of consequence," another voice interjected. "Lady Ravenna of Shadowfen, dark where Celestara was light, with violet eyes that seemed to see too much. Just a servant the Alpha took pity on." "A servant?" Celestara's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "At the lunar gathering?" "I invited her." Kieran's voice cut through the hall like a blade. He moved through the crowd, which parted instinctively until he stood before them. To everyone's shock, he offered Lyrali his arm. "You honor us, Alpha Blackthorn," Celestara purred, stepping closer. "I've been so looking forward to our dance." "Have you?" His tone was bored as he led Lyrelei away. "How unfortunate." The music began, a waltz that Lyrelei barely knew. But Kieran's hand on her waist guided her perfectly, making her feel like she was floating. "You're shaking," he murmured, everyone staring. "Let them." He spun her and the room blurred. "You're worth 1,000 of them." "You don't know me." "Don't I?" His hand splayed across her back, right over the worst of her scars. "I know you gave your dinner to the younger servants when food was short. I know you sing lullabies to calm the pups during storms. I know you've been saving copper coins for 3 years to buy Nanamirin medicine." "How?" "I told you. I know everything in my territory." He pulled her closer, his voice dropping. "Including that those scars were made by Shadow Market slavers. Including that you escaped when you were 7. Including that Nanamirin isn't your grandmother. She's the retired pack warrior who found you half dead in the snow and hid you among the servants." The blood drained from her face. "If you know, then I know you're not just wolfless. You're suppressed. Someone bound your wolf with dark magic." His hand found the spot over her heart. "The 23rd scar, the one here. That's the binding mark." The music stopped. In the sudden silence, a slow clap echoed through the hall. "Fascinating." Lady Ravenna smiled, and something in that smile made Lyrelei's skin crawl. The savage Alpha and his scarred servant. What a touching story. "Though I wonder," Celestara added, ice forming around her fingers, "what the other Alphas will think when they learn you're favoring damaged goods over proper alliances." "Careful." Kieran's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "You're speaking about what's mine." "Yours?" Ravenna's violet eyes gleamed. "She bears no mate mark." "Not yet." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Lyrelei tried to step back, but Kieran's grip was iron. "A challenge, then," Celestara declared, her voice carrying over the noise. "The servant girl can compete with us for your hand. If she's truly worthy of the Savage Alpha, she'll survive the trials." "The lunar trials haven't been called in 50 years, Maxim protested. "Then it's time to revive tradition." Ravenna's smile was sharp. 3 trials: magic, combat, and truth. Winners compete for the Alpha's mark. She looked directly at Lirali. Losers. Well, accidents happen during the trials. "Accepted," Lirali heard herself say, though her voice seemed to come from far away. Kieran turned to her, something dangerous in his expression. "You don't know what you're agreeing to." "Then teach me." She met his gaze steadily. "Or was all that pretty talk about me belonging to you just words?" His smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely breathtaking. "You want to play with wolves, little lamb? I want to stop running." He leaned down, his breath hot against her ear. "Then let me show you what it means to be claimed by a monster." Behind them, unnoticed by all except old healer Thessaly, a servant woman watched from the shadows. Nana Mirren's eyes held an ancient sadness as she observed the girl she'd protected for 10 years stepping into destiny's path. Her weathered hand touched the hidden pendant at her throat, a symbol of the gravekeepers, those who stood between life and death. "So it begins," she whispered, her voice carrying power that would have shocked anyone who heard it. "The last dance of shadows and light." Dawn came too early, bringing with it the reality of what Lirelei had agreed to. She stood in the training grounds, wearing borrowed leather pants and a tunic that couldn't quite hide all her scars. Around her, a dozen daughters of allied packs stretched and practiced, their movements fluid with years of training she'd never had. "First trial is at sunset," Kieran said, prowling around her like the predator he was. "Magic. They'll expect you to fail immediately." "Because I have no magic." She tried to keep the fear from her voice. "Because they don't know what you are." He stopped behind her close enough that his heat warmed her back. "Your wolf isn't gone, Lirali. She's caged. And cages can be broken. The binding scar is old magic. Shadow market slavers use it on young wolves they want to sell as powerless servants." His fingers ghosted over the spot through her tunic. "But bindings weaken over time. And with the right motivation, they can shatter completely." Princess Celestara laughed from across the grounds, ice spiraling around her in beautiful, deadly patterns. Lady Ravenna beside her made shadows dance like living things. The other competitors wielded fire, earth, storm, all the gifts of alpha bloodlines. "I'm going to die tonight," Lirali said flatly. "No." Kieran turned her to face him, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You're going to surprise them all. Close your eyes." "Why?" "Trust me." She did, though she couldn't say why. His hands moved to frame her face, thumbs resting on her temples. "Find the cage," he murmured, his voice hypnotic. "Deep inside, where your wolf should be. Feel the bars." She searched, diving deep into herself, past the pain and fear and years of servitude. And there it was. A cage of shadow and pain, with something brilliant pacing inside it. "I see her," she gasped. She's white, pure white, with eyes like—" She broke off, shocked. "Like mine," Kieran finished. "The mark of an alpha." Her eyes flew open. "That's impossible. I'm an Omega Dash quote." "You're nothing of the sort." His smile was fierce. "Someone went to great lengths to hide what you are. But they made one mistake. They didn't kill you." A bell rang across the grounds. Maxime approached, his expression grim. "The other pack's representatives have arrived to witness the trials. Including—" he hesitated. "Including delegates from the shadow market." Lyrelai's blood turned to ice. Why would they? Lady Ravenna's family has dealings with them, Kieran said darkly. How convenient that she suggested the trials. You think this is a trap? I know it is. He pulled a long, thin blade from his belt, offering it to her. Silver and wolfsbane. If someone tries to kill you outside the trials, use this. And inside the trials? Inside the trials? He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. Show them why I chose you. That evening, the great hall had been transformed into an arena. 3 circles of power were carved into the floor: ice, shadow, and blood. The crowd pressed against magical barriers, hungry for violence. In the preparation chamber, Nana Miran appeared, moving with more grace than her supposed age should allow. Child, she said softly, pressing something into Lyralai's hand, a small vial of clear liquid. Drink this if the binding fights too hard. It will ease the way. What is it? A gift from someone who loves you. The old woman's eyes held depths Lyralai had never noticed before. Trust me, as you've always trusted me. The first trial, Elder Thaddeus announced as Lyralai entered the arena, is magical combat. Each competitor must defend against attacks from all others for 1 full minute. Those who fall do not rise. Lyralai stood in the center circle, the vial hidden in her palm, feeling very small as the other 11 competitors surrounded her. Celestara's smile was vicious, Ravenna's calculating. Begin! Ice shards flew immediately, aimed at her heart. Lyralai dove, rolling as shadows tried to entangle her feet. Fire scorched the air where she'd been standing. She had no magic to defend with, only instinct and desperation. Find the cage, Kieran's voice echoed in her mind. Break it. A whip of pure darkness caught her ankle, yanking her down. She hit hard, tasting blood. Lightning struck inches from her head. The crowd roared for blood, for death, for entertainment. Pathetic, Celestara laughed, ice forming a spear in her hand. The savage alpha's pet can't even... Pain exploded through Lyralai's chest, not from an attack, from inside. The binding scar burned like acid, and suddenly she could feel it. The cage cracking, her wolf slamming against the bars with desperate fury. Let me out. A voice that was hers but not hers snarled. Let me protect us. 20 seconds, someone shouted. Ravenna's shadows wrapped around Lyralai's throat, lifting her off the ground. I know what you are, the lady whispered, too low for anyone else to hear. My family's slavers marked you. You were supposed to be sold to me on your 16th birthday. Imagine my surprise finding you here. Black spots danced in Lyralai's vision. Without thinking, she crushed the vial in her hand, the liquid absorbing through her skin instantly. Fire raced through her veins, not painful but liberating. 10 seconds. Die quietly, Ravenna hissed, or I'll ensure your precious Nana Miran. The cage shattered. Power exploded from Lyralai like a supernova. Pure white light that burned away shadows, melted ice, devoured fire. The magical barriers around the arena cracked. Several spectators screamed. Every competitor was blown backward, hitting the walls with bone-crushing force. When the light faded, Lyralai stood in the center, her eyes now flickering between silver and crimson. White fur rippled along her arms for a moment before receding. The binding scar on her chest was cracked, bleeding light instead of blood, fighting to reseal itself. Impossible, Elder Thaddeus breathed. Time, Kieran said calmly from his throne, though his knuckles were white where he gripped the armrests. She survived the full minute. She's an alpha, someone in the crowd whispered. A female alpha. They're supposed to be extinct. Lyralai swayed on her feet, the world spinning. The cage was rebuilding itself, but slower now, weaker. Her wolf was fighting back. Celestara struggled to her feet, nose bleeding. She cheated. No servant has that kind of power naturally. Are you questioning the legitimacy of my trials? Ravenna asked smoothly, though murderous intent blazed in her eyes as they fixed on Lirelai. How ungracious of you, princess. The first trial goes to Lirelai, Elder Thaddeus announced reluctantly. The second trial begins at dawn. Combat. No magic, only steel and skill. As the crowd dispersed, Kieran was suddenly there, catching Lirelai as her legs gave out. You magnificent, reckless creature, he breathed against her hair. You just declared war on every pack here. Worth it, she mumbled into his chest, then froze. Did I just... Is my wolf? Temporarily free. The binding is cracked but still fighting to hold. He lifted her easily, carrying her from the hall. We need to prepare. Ravenna won't let you survive tomorrow. She said I was meant to be sold to her. His arms tightened possessively. Over my dead body. Don't say that, she whispered. Death has been following me for too long. I won't let it take you too. The morning found Lyralee in the private training room beneath the fortress, her body aching from the magical backlash. Kieran stood across from her, 2 practice swords in his hands. I don't know how to fight, she said for the 10th time. You survived 7 years in the Shadow Market slave camps. You know how to fight. He tossed her a blade which she barely caught. You just don't know how to fight with honor. There's no honor in the trials. They want me dead. Exactly. His smile was all predator. So we're going to teach you to fight dirty. For hours he pushed her, showing her where to strike for maximum pain, how to use her smaller size as an advantage, how to turn an opponent's strength against them. By noon, she was drenched in sweat and covered in bruises, but she'd managed to land 3 hits on him. You're holding back, she accused, panting. So are you. He stalked closer, backing her against the wall. Your wolf is right there, under the surface. I can smell her. Wild, furious, magnificent. Let her guide you. The binding is weakening every time you call on her. His hand pressed against the scar through her training shirt. Pain is just another cage, Lirelai. Break through it. The door burst open. Maxime stood there, face grim. We have a problem. They followed him to the healer's wing, where Nana Miran lay unconscious, her skin bearing strange black marks. But even in unconsciousness, there was something different about her. A faint shimmer in the air around her, like heat waves off summer stone. Poison, Healer Thessaly said, her ancient eyes worried. Shadow Market blend. Someone wanted to send a message. There's more, Thessaly added quietly. The poison is reacting strangely with her blood. As if she's not entirely human. Rage flooded through Lirelai, so hot it made her vision go red. Her wolf snarled inside its damaged cage, demanding blood. She ignored the revelation about Nana Miran. That could wait. Ravenna, she growled, and her voice was more wolf than human. Without proof, we can't... Maxime started. I don't need proof. Lirelai turned to Kieran. The combat trial. I choose her as my opponent. You can't. The opponents are drawn randomly. Unless someone issues a blood challenge. The words came from somewhere deep, some knowledge her wolf possessed. I issue blood challenge against Lady Ravenna of Shadowfen for the attempted murder of my pack member. Silence. Then Kieran laughed, dark and delighted. You're learning. She'll kill you, Maxim warned. Ravenna's been trained since birth. Then I'll die fighting instead of hiding. Lirelai looked at Nana Miran's still form. I'm done being helpless. That afternoon, the arena was packed. Word of the blood challenge had spread like wildfire. In the preparation chamber, Kieran helped Lirelai strap on leather armor that would do little against a skilled opponent. Aim for her left shoulder, he murmured, adjusting a buckle. She favors it when she's tired. And Lyrelai. He tilted her chin up. Don't die. That's an order from your alpha. You're not my alpha yet? Aren't I? His thumb brushed her lower lip, and heat pooled in her belly. Your wolf recognizes mine. Your body responds to my commands. Your scent? He inhaled deeply. Your scent calls to me like nothing else ever has. Kieran -- After you win, he said, stepping back. We'll discuss what we are. The arena was different for combat trials. Sand floor to absorb blood, weapons displayed along the walls. No magical barriers because this was meant to be raw, visceral, real. Ravenna waited in the center, her dark hair braided with razor wire, her leathers pristine. The little slave comes to play, she purred loud enough for all to hear. Tell me, did you cry when we branded you? I was young, but I remember father letting me watch. You were, what, 7? So small, so broken. The crowd murmured. Lyrelai felt Kieran's rage from across the arena, saw his claws extending. I survived, Lyrelai said simply. Barely. Father was furious when you escaped. We hunted for months. Ravenna drew twin daggers, their blades black with poison. Imagine my delight finding you here, playing dress-up as something more than the worthless slave you are. Begin, Elder Thaddeus called. Ravenna moved like smoke, fast and fluid. Her first strike would have opened Lyrelai's throat if she hadn't jerked back, the blade kissing her skin just enough to draw blood. The second caught her ribs, parting leather like paper. Move, her wolf screamed. Fight! But knowing and doing were different things. Ravenna was toying with her, inflicting small cuts that burned with poison. The crowd was getting what they wanted: blood, humiliation, sport. Your white wolf is magnificent, Ravenna whispered as their blades locked. Father will pay handsomely to get you back. We'll break you properly this time. Bind you so thoroughly you'll forget you ever had a wolf at all. Something inside Lyrelai snapped. The next strike Ravenna aimed at her shoulder, Lyrelai caught on her blade and twisted, using Kieran's technique. The dagger flew from Ravenna's hand. Before the lady could react, Lyrelai was inside her guard, her blade at Ravenna's throat. You talk too much, Lyrelai said. Ravenna's remaining dagger plunged toward Lyrelai's heart, the killing blow. But Lyrelai was already moving, her wolf's instinct screaming. She dropped, swept Ravenna's legs, and rose with her blade pressed against the lady's neck as she hit the sand. Yield, Lyrelai demanded. Never to a slave. Then die as a slaver's daughter. Wait. Ravenna's eyes went wide with real fear. I yield. I yield. Lyrelai stepped back, breathing hard. The crowd was silent, shocked. Then Kieran started clapping, slow and deliberate. Others joined until the arena thundered with applause. The second trial goes to Lyrelai, Elder Thaddeus announced, sounding strangled. But as Lyrelai turned to leave, Ravenna's voice stopped her. You think you've won something? You have no idea what you are, what that marking means. When they find out, when he finds out, you'll beg for death. Who? Lyrelai demanded. Who's looking for me? But Ravenna was already being dragged away by her pack guards, her laughter echoing off the walls. That night, Lyrelai sat beside Nana Miran's bed, watching the old woman's breathing slowly, steadily as the antidote worked. The strange shimmer around her had faded, but Lyrelai couldn't forget Thessaly's words. Kieran found her there, bringing dinner she didn't want. You need to eat. The final trial is tomorrow. Truth, she said quietly. What truth will they demand? The truth of what you are? He sat beside her, his presence comforting. Your past, your power, your purpose. I don't know any of those things. Then we'll discover them together. He took her hand, and she didn't pull away. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, whoever wants you, they'll have to go through me. Why? She turned to him, searching his face. Why do you care so much? Because my wolf knew you the moment you walked into my pack 3 years ago. Because your scent haunts my dreams. Because... He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her scarred knuckles. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen something more than a savage. Kieran dash dash. The door burst open. Maxim stood there, face white. Alpha, you need to see this. Both of you. They followed him to the council chamber where a projection crystal showed an image that made Lirale's blood freeze. It was her. But not as she was now, as she'd been at 7 years old, standing beside a throne made of bones. And on that throne sat a man whose face was burned into her nightmares, whose voice still whispered in the darkest corners of her mind. The Shadow King, Maxim said grimly. This image was just delivered by Raven. With a message. Kieran's voice was deadly quiet. What message? Return what was stolen or watch your pack burn. You have until the final trials end. Lirelei stared at her younger self in the image, at the collar around that child's neck, at the Shadow King's possessive hand on her shoulder. And finally, horribly, she remembered. She wasn't just an escaped slave. She was the Shadow King's lost bride. You're the ghost bride, Elder Thaddeus breathed, his ancient face pale with recognition. The child who vanished from the Shadow Realm 10 years ago. They say the Shadow King went mad when you disappeared. The council chamber had erupted into chaos at the revelation, but Lirelei could only stare at the projected image. Memories she'd buried deep were clawing their way to the surface, a throne room that reeked of death, ceremonies performed in languages that hurt to hear, the Shadow King's cold fingers tracing the scars he'd carved into her skin. She was 7 years old, Kieran snarled, his power flooding the room until several council members dropped to their knees. What kind of monster claims a child as a bride? The kind who rules the space between life and death, Lady Morwen, an elder from the Nightshade Pack, whispered. The Shadow King isn't fully human, hasn't been for centuries. He takes a bride every 100 years. A white wolf, always a white wolf. They never live past their 18th birthday. The ceremony, Liralei said, her voice hollow. I remember now. He was binding me to him, scar by scar. Each one tied my life force to his. On my 18th birthday, he would have... She couldn't finish. Consumed you, Morwen finished. Absorbed your power to extend his unnatural life another century. But you escaped before the binding was complete, Kieran said, understanding dawning. That's why the 23rd scar is different. It was meant to be the final seal. Which means, Maxime said slowly, she's still connected to him. And in 3 days, on her 18th birthday, the binding will activate whether complete or not. Thaddeus looked at Lirelei with something between pity and fear. You'll either die or be drawn back to him. The winter solstice, Lirelei whispered. That's when the marking ceremony happened 10 years ago. That became my ritual birthday in the binding. 3 days from now. We'll break the binding, Kieran said firmly. Impossible. Shadow King bindings can only be broken by... Thaddeus stopped, his eyes widening. No. You can't be thinking... A mate bond, Kieran finished. Stronger magic than any dark binding. You'd have to mark her before her 18th birthday, and she'd have to mark you in return. A full mate bond, not just a claiming. Then we'll... I can't. Lirelei's voice cut through their planning. Everyone turned to stare at her. I can't let you bind yourself to me. When the Shadow King comes, and he will come, he'll kill you. Let him try. You don't understand. The memories were flooding back now, horrible and vivid. He commands armies of the dead. He can walk through shadows across any distance. He's immortal, unkillable. Everything can die, Kieran said quietly, even things that have forgotten how. Behind them, unnoticed, Nana Miran stood in the doorway. She'd woken and followed them, moving with a grace that belied her supposed age. Her eyes held ancient knowledge as she watched the scene unfold. A knock at the door interrupted them. A messenger entered, bowing low. The final trial has been moved to dawn by order of the Pack Alliance, and... He hesitated. Princess Celestara has demanded the right of question. What's that? Lyra Lee asked. Ancient law, Thaddeus explained grimly. Any competitor can demand you answer 3 questions under truth compulsion. Refuse, and you forfeit the trials. Let me guess. Kieran's smile was all teeth. The questions will be about her past. Most certainly. That night, Lirali couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of Kieran's chambers, where he'd insisted she stay for safety, watching the moon paint the world silver. She heard him approach, but didn't turn. You should run, she said. Take your pack and run. The Shadow King will turn this place into a graveyard. I've been called a savage, a monster, a demon, he said, moving to stand beside her. But I've never been called a coward. This isn't about courage. It's about survival. No. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. It's about choosing what's worth fighting for. And you are. You barely know me. I know enough. His hand moved to cup her cheek. I know you sing to morning birds because you understand loneliness. I know you feed strays because you've been hungry. I know you read stolen books because knowledge was the only thing they couldn't take from you. That's not... I know your favorite color is the purple of sunset skies. I know you count your steps when you're nervous. I know you touch your scars when you think no one's looking, like you're making sure you're still real. Tears burned her eyes. How do you... Because I've watched you for 3 years. Because my wolf recognized its mate the moment you entered my territory. Because every instinct I have screams that you're mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to love. Love? The word came out broken. Love, he confirmed, then kissed her. It was nothing like she'd imagined her first kiss would be. It was fire and demand and desperate need. It was coming home and going to war all at once. Her wolf howled in recognition, slamming against its weakened cage. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw his eyes were fully crimson. Mark me, she whispered, before the trial, before it's too late. That's not how mate bonds work. You have to mark me too, and your wolf. We'll be free during the trial. Truth magic breaks all other magic temporarily. She pressed closer to him. If we time it right, if you mark me just before, and I mark you during, it's dangerous. If it doesn't work, then at least I'll die yours instead of his. His kiss this time was savage, possessive, a claiming of its own kind. You'll live, he growled against her lips. You'll live and be mine, and we'll face whatever comes together. A howl split the night. Unnatural, wrong, carrying the chill of the grave. They broke apart, staring out at the forest. At the tree line, shadows moved independently of their sources, reaching toward the fortress like grasping fingers. He's sending scouts, Lirali whispered. The Shadow King knows where I am. From the corner of the room, Nana Miran watched through a crack in the door, her weathered hand touching the hidden pendant at her throat, a symbol of the gravekeepers. Soon, she whispered to herself. Soon the child will need to know the truth. Kieran pulled Lyrelai inside, his body tense with battle readiness. Then we'd better make sure tomorrow's trial ends in our favor. But as they prepared for bed, Him insisting on sleeping on the floor despite her protests. Literally couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would bring more than just truth. Tomorrow would bring war. Dawn came wrapped in unnatural fog, shadows writhing where no shadows should exist. Lyrelei stood in Kieran's chambers as he pressed his lips to the base of her neck, right where it met her shoulder. "This will hurt," he warned, his canines extending. "Everything hurts. This is different. This is choosing the pain." His teeth sank deep, and fire raced through her veins. Not the burning of poison or torture, but something wild and alive. She felt the bond trying to form, reaching for her wolf who remained trapped behind the cracking cage. The mark wouldn't complete until she could reciprocate. But it was there. A promise waiting to be fulfilled. "My turn will come," she whispered against his throat, making him shudder. The great hall had been transformed for the final trial. 3 circles of power overlapped in the center. 1 silver for truth, 1 gold for memory, 1 black for judgment. The Pack Alliance representatives sat in elevated seats, while hundreds of witnesses pressed against the barriers. Princess Celestara stood in the gold circle, her ice-blue dress making her look like winter incarnate. "I invoke the right of question against the competitor Lyrali." "Accepted," Elder Thaddeus intoned. "The question must stand in the circle of truth." As Lyrelei stepped into the silver circle, power slammed into her like a physical force. The truth magic was ancient, absolute, and it immediately attacked every other magic touching her. The binding scar on her chest began to crack further, burning as it fought against the truth magic's purifying force. "First question," Celestara announced, voice carrying to every corner. "What is your true name and nature?" The magic compelled her to speak. "I am Lyrelei Moonwhisper, last daughter of the extinct celestial wolf bloodline. I am the stolen bride of the Shadow King, marked but not claimed. I am—" She gasped as something inside her shifted violently. "I am the Alpha of the Lost Pack, those who died defending me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The celestial wolves were legend, white wolves who could walk between the living and dead, whose alphas were said to be immortal killers. Second question. Celestara's smile was vicious. "How many have died because of you?" 207. The words ripped from Lyrelei's throat. "My entire pack when I was 4. The slavers who tried to recapture me. The servants who helped me escape. The travelers who sheltered me. All dead because the Shadow King wanted his bride back." She saw Kieran's hands clench, saw the rage and sorrow warring in his features. Final question. Celestara leaned forward. "What will happen to the Blood Moon Pack if you stay?" The truth magic reached deep, pulling out knowledge she didn't even know she possessed. "The Shadow King comes with an army of 10,000 corpses. He'll kill everyone except Kieran, who he'll torture for 1,000 years for touching what he considers his. The land will become a dead zone where nothing living can grow. Unless—" She bit her tongue hard enough to draw blood, fighting the compulsion. "Unless?" Thaddeus prompted. "Unless I complete the mate bond with Kieran before my 18th birthday." Blood ran down her chin. "A fully mated celestial wolf can command the dead better than any Shadow King. I could turn his army against him." The hall erupted. Several alphas were on their feet, shouting. But Lyrelei wasn't done. The truth magic, combined with her desperate will, had finally, completely shattered what remained of the binding cage. Her wolf exploded free. The transformation was violent, bones breaking and reforming, skin sprouting pure white fur that seemed to glow with inner light. When it ended, a massive white wolf stood in the circle, eyes blazing with alpha power. "Mine!" Her wolf roared through the mental link all alphas shared, and every wolf in the hall, even the other alphas, felt the compulsion to submit. She shifted back, naked and shaking, as Kieran threw his cloak around her. The binding scar on her chest was now visibly fighting a losing battle, cracks of light spreading from it like a spider web. "The trial is concluded," Thaddeus announced shakily. "Lyra Lee has answered truthfully. The Shadow King's message has been received and rejected. We stand with the Blood Moon Pack." "You'll all die for this," Celestara snarled, ice spreading from her feet. "When the Shadow King—" Her words cut off in a gurgle. A blade of pure shadow protruded from her chest. Behind her, Lady Ravenna materialized from darkness, her violet eyes completely black. "The Shadow King sends his regards," Ravenna said in a voice not her own, ancient, cold, amused. "My beautiful bride, did you think you could escape me forever?" "Get away from her!" Kieran roared, shifting into his massive black wolf. "Ah, the savage pup who thinks he can claim what's mine." Ravenna/Shadow King laughed. "I can smell my mark on her. Incomplete, but still binding. In 2 days, when the solstice comes, she'll return to me whether she wishes or not. Unless—" "Unless what?" Lyrelai demanded. "Face me directly. Tomorrow night, at the Bone Bridge between territories. Come alone, and I'll release my claim. Refuse, or bring help, and I'll slaughter every pack in the 7 territories, starting with the pups." Ravenna's body collapsed, black smoke pouring from her mouth. When it cleared, she was herself again, gasping and crying. "He's in my head. He's been in my head since I was child, watching through my eyes, waiting." "The trial is over," Kieran commanded, his alpha power shaking the walls. "Everyone out except my inner circle." As the hall emptied, Lyra sank to her knees. The truth was out. Everyone knew what she was now, a living weapon that the Shadow King would kill thousands to reclaim. "We have 2 days," Maxime said grimly, "to either prepare for war or dash. "I'm going to face him," Lyra interrupted. "Like hell you are," Kieran snarled. "It's the only way." "You heard him." "I heard a monster trying to isolate you." He knelt beside her, pulling her against him. "We'll find another way." But as shadows began creeping across the windows despite the morning sun, Lyrelai knew there was no other way. The Shadow King had found her, and one way or another, this would end at the Bone Bridge. Behind them all, Nana Mirren stepped from the shadows where she'd been observing. "There is another way," she said, her voice carrying power none of them had heard before. "But first, child, you need to know what you really are. What I've been hiding from you all these years." Everyone turned to stare at the old woman, who suddenly didn't seem old at all. "I am Miriel," Nana Mirren said, straightening to her full height, years seeming to fall away from her. "Last of the Gravekeepers, guardians of the boundary between life and death. And I have been waiting 10 years for this moment." The War Council stood frozen as the woman they'd known as a frail servant revealed her true nature. Power radiated from her, not the raw force of an alpha, but something older, deeper. "You knew," Lyrelai whispered. "You knew what I was all along." "I knew what you could become." Miriel approached slowly. "When I found you that night, bleeding in the snow, the Shadow King's mark still fresh on your skin, I saw 2 futures. In one, you became his puppet, a weapon of darkness. In the other," she smiled sadly, "in the other, you became what the celestial wolves were meant to be." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because knowing too soon would have drawn him here faster. Your wolf needed time to grow strong enough to resist the binding." She pulled out a pendant from beneath her robes, a silver wheel with spokes of light and shadow. "This has been masking your presence, making you harder to find. But now that he knows where you are—" "We fight," Kieran said firmly. "You can't fight death itself," Miriel replied. "But she can." She looked at Lyrelai. A celestial alpha at full power doesn't kill the dead, they guide them. They can sever the Shadow King's control over his army, give those poor souls the peace they've been denied. But I need to complete the mate bond first. Yes, and there's something else. Muriel hesitated. The Shadow King isn't lying about coming alone to the Bone Bridge. He will come alone, because he's bringing something that makes an army unnecessary. What? Your parents' souls. He's kept them trapped for 13 years, tortured and twisted. He'll use them against you. Lyrelai's legs gave out. Kieran caught her, his arms the only thing keeping her upright. My parents. They're neither alive nor properly dead. It's the cruelest thing he could do, and exactly what I'd expect from him. Muriel's expression hardened. But it's also his weakness. He's so focused on cruelty that he's forgotten compassion has its own power. The council continued through the night, plans within plans being formed, but eventually, Lyrelai escaped to the balcony, needing air, needing space to think. She found pack members gathered in the courtyard below, not just warriors, but families. Children played despite the danger, their laughter a defiant sound against the encroaching darkness. These people would die for her, kill for her. The weight of it was crushing. They choose to be here, Kieran said, joining her. No one is forcing them to stay. Aren't I? By being here, I'm signing their death warrants. By being here, you're giving us something to fight for. He pulled her against him. Do you know what this pack was before you arrived? Strong, yes. Feared, certainly. But cold. Empty. We went through the motions of pack life without really living. And then a servant girl started singing to the birds, leaving food for strays, reading stories to the pups when she thought no one was watching. His arms tightened around her. You brought life back to this place without even trying. A child's scream cut through the night, the same terrified sound as before. They ran toward it, finding a crowd gathered. But this time, it wasn't possession. A young pup stood in the center, pointing at the sky in terror. Above them, written in shadows against the stars, words appeared. Come now, or I start with the youngest. 1 child every hour until you face me. I'm going, Lyrelai said immediately. Wait. Muriel stepped forward, pulling out a second vial, this one filled with liquid that seemed to be made of starlight. Drink this first. What is it? Freedom. The old keeper's eyes were sad but determined. It will shatter the binding completely, let your wolf fully emerge. But the pain. She hesitated. The pain might kill you. And if it doesn't? Then you'll be the first celestial alpha to fully manifest in 300 years. Lyrelai took the vial without hesitation and drank it in one swallow. The effect was immediate and devastating. She collapsed, screaming, as every nerve in her body seemed to catch fire. The binding scar on her chest didn't just crack, it exploded outward in a shower of black ichor and light. Her wolf erupted free, but this time the transformation didn't stop at fur and fangs. Wings. Massive, white wings sprouted from her back, each feather tipped with silver. Her wolf form grew larger, more powerful, until she stood eye to eye with Kieran's wolf. The silver markings on her fur glowed like moonlight, and her eyes had become mirrors of the cosmos, showing the space between life and death. I am free, her wolf sang, and every wolf for miles heard it and howled in response. She shifted back, the wings folding into intricate tattoos across her shoulder blades. Naked, scarred, but unashamed, she stood before them all. No longer the servant girl, but something ancient and new at once. Mark me, she told Kieran. Complete what you started. Make me yours, as I make you mine. He didn't hesitate. His mark on her neck flared to life as she bit him in return, their blood mingling, their souls intertwining. The bond that formed wasn't like typical mate bonds. It was deeper, stronger, a melding of savage and celestial. "Now," she said, power thrumming through every word, "I go to face him. Not alone, never alone, because you're all with me." She touched her chest where Kieran's bond pulsed warm and steady. "And he's about to learn what happens when you threaten a Celestial Alpha's pack." The shadows in the sky writhed angrily. The Shadow King had felt the binding shatter, felt her transformation. "Good. Let him know, fear for once." "We march at midnight," she declared. "All of us. He wants me at the Bone Bridge, he'll get me. But he'll also get something he didn't bargain for." "What's that?" Maxim asked. Her smile was sharp as moonlight. "A pack that chooses to fight. Gravekeepers who remember their duty. And a mate who would burn the world for me, just as I would for him." She looked at each of them. "He thinks he's bringing an army of the dead. But we're bringing something stronger, the living who refuse to yield." As they prepared for war, Lyrelei felt her parents' souls calling to her across the distance, twisted in pain but still recognizably them. "I'm coming," she whispered to the wind. "Hold on just a little longer. Your daughter has finally come home." The Bone Bridge looked different at midnight. The skeletons in its structure glowed with an unholy light, and the air itself felt thick with death. The Shadow King stood at its center, but he wasn't alone. Two figures flanked him, translucent and writhing, their faces twisted in permanent agony. Her parents. "Mom," Lyrelei breathed, her newly freed wolf howling in grief. "Dad." "They can't hear you," the Shadow King said, his voice carrying despite the distance. 13 years of torture tends to destroy such human connections. But they remember you. Oh yes, they remember their failure to protect you. Kieran's hand found hers, their bond pulsing with shared strength. Behind them, 7 packs stood ready, not hiding, not ambushing, but standing as witnesses. "You brought an army," the Shadow King observed, amused. "How disappointing. I specifically said—" "You said come alone. I'm standing here alone." Lyrelei stepped forward, her wings manifesting in a shower of silver light. "They're just here to watch me end you." For the first time in centuries, the Shadow King looked surprised. "Impossible. The binding is broken. Completely." She spread her wings wide, each feather catching moonlight. "I am Lyrali Moonwhisper, last Celestial Alpha, keeper of the boundary, guide of the lost, and you have held these souls past their time. They're mine by right of conquest. Nothing dead belongs to anyone." Miriel stepped from the crowd, joined by 12 others. Gravekeepers Lyrali hadn't known existed, all emerging from their hidden lives. "We've been waiting, Shadow King. Waiting for a Celestial Alpha to return and restore the balance you've corrupted." The Shadow King snarled, and thousands of corpses erupted from the ground, his army, finally revealed. But Lyrelei was already moving, her wings carrying her above the battlefield. "Listen to me." Her voice carried power that made reality itself pause. "All you lost souls, trapped in false flesh, bound to false purpose, I see you, I know you, and I free you." Silver light poured from her, not attacking but embracing. Each corpse it touched stopped fighting, standing still as the light showed them what they'd forgotten: their names, their lives, their deaths, their right to rest. "No." The Shadow King raised his hands, shadows coiling like serpents. "You cannot." "I can." She landed before him, no longer the frightened child he'd marked. "Because I understand something you've forgotten in your centuries of existence. Death isn't the enemy, it's just another doorway." They fought, shadow against light, ancient power against newfound purpose. But this time, she wasn't trying to destroy him, she was trying to save him. "You were human once," she said, dodging his attacks with grace her wings provided. "Before the fear of death drove you to this. I can feel it. The moment you chose immortality over mortality. Silence. You were dying. Your wife, your children, already gone to plague. You made a bargain, your soul for the power to never lose anyone again." His attacks faltered. "How do you—" "Because celestial alphas can see the threads that connect all souls. And yours." She touched his chest, and he was too shocked to stop her. "Yours has been screaming in pain for so long you've forgotten it's your own voice you hear." For a moment, his form flickered, and she saw him as he'd been. Just a man, broken by loss, terrified of joining his family in death. "They're waiting for you," she whispered. "Your real family. They've been waiting all this time, refusing to move on until you join them. Lies. Truth." She pulled him into the space between, that realm celestial alphas could access, where life and death met. There, shimmering with patient love, stood a woman and 2 children, waiting. The Shadow King, who had terrorized the world for 3 millennia, fell to his knees and wept. "Maria? James? Little Sarah?" "Hello, my love," the woman said, her voice like distant bells. "It's time to come home. I've done terrible things. We know. We've seen. But love is patient, and forgiveness is infinite on this side." She held out her hand. "Come. Rest. You've carried this burden long enough." Lyrelai felt the moment he decided. The shadows that had defined him for centuries began to unravel, revealing the soul beneath, tired, broken, but still human at its core. "Wait," he said, turning to Lyrelai. "Your parents." With the last of his power, he released them. The tortured souls of her mother and father solidified, their agony fading as they saw their daughter. "Lyrelai?" Her mother's voice was exactly as she remembered. "My brave girl. Look how you've grown." "Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry." "No, sweetheart." Her father smiled and she was 7 again, safe in his arms. "We're sorry. Sorry we couldn't protect you, but look what you've become. Exactly what the world needed." "We can't stay," her mother said gently. "Our time here is done. But we'll be waiting when your time comes. Decades from now, lifetimes from now. We'll be waiting with such pride." They faded like morning mist, but not before she felt their love wrap around her like the warmest embrace. The Shadow King turned to his waiting family. "Will you forgive me?" "Already done," his wife said simply. "Love doesn't keep score." As he took her hand, his form began to dissolve into light, not the harsh light of forced purification, but the gentle glow of coming home. The army of corpses collapsed, finally at peace. The darkness that had gathered fled. And in the space where the Shadow King had stood, a single white rose grew from the stone, life from death, beauty from pain. "It's over," Kieran said, pulling Lyrelai into his arms. "No," she corrected, feeling the weight and wonder of her new role. "It's just beginning." Around them, the gravekeepers knelt, not in submission, but in recognition. The balance had been restored. The boundary had its guardian again. But Lyrelai had eyes only for Kieran, her savage alpha who'd stood by her through everything. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Always," he promised, and kissed her as the sun began to rise. 3 months later, the Blood Moon Pact territory had transformed. Where shadows once crept at the edges, gardens now bloomed. The Bone Bridge, cleansed of its dark history, had become a pilgrimage site for those seeking to say goodbye to lost loved ones. Lyralee stood in the pack's great hall, but it wasn't for a trial or challenge this time. It was for a celebration, the official mating ceremony that would unite not just her and Kieran, but symbolically join the 7 packs in a new alliance. "Stop fidgeting," Muriel said, adjusting the silver crown woven with moonflowers. The old gravekeeper had returned to her role as Nana Miriam most days, preferring the simple life, but today she stood as Muriel, guardian and friend. "I'm not fidgeting. You're practically vibrating." Thessaly added another pin to Lyralee's hair. "It's perfectly normal to be nervous." "I'm not nervous about marrying Kieran. I'm nervous about—" She gestured at the window, where representatives from dozens of packs had gathered. "All of this, they're calling me the Bridgewalker, the Death Dancer, the Celestial Alpha. They expect nothing," Muriel said firmly. "You've already given them more than they dared hope: freedom from the Shadow King's threat, restoration of the balance, proof that even the darkest power can choose redemption." "I didn't redeem him. He chose." "Exactly. You showed him he had a choice. That's what Celestial Alphas do. They don't force souls to move on. They remind them they can." A knock interrupted. "5 minutes," Maxim called through the door. Lyralee looked at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple white silk that left her arms bare, displaying the scars she no longer hid. But now they were interwoven with silver markings, not of binding but of becoming. Her wings were folded into their tattoo form across her shoulders, but everyone knew they were there. "You're beautiful," Thessaly said simply. "Scars and all. Especially the scars." The great hall was packed when she entered, but she had eyes only for Kieran, standing at the altar in black and silver, looking like the dangerous predator he was, except for his eyes. Those crimson eyes held such love it took her breath away. The ceremony was both traditional and not. They exchanged vows in the old language but added their own promises. "I promise," Kieran said, his voice carrying to every corner, "to love you not despite your scars but because of them. To stand beside you whether you're servant or celestial, wounded or whole, lost or found. To choose you every day, every moment, forever." "I promise," Lyralee replied, her wings manifesting in response to her emotion. "To love you not as subject to Alpha, but as equal to equal. To run with your wolf and fly beside your dreams. To choose you, in this life, and whatever comes after." When they kissed, the bond between them flared so bright that everyone felt it, a moment of perfect connection between savage and celestial, earth and sky, life and death. But the celebration was interrupted by an unexpected guest. Lady Ravenna entered, but she looked different, cleaner, clearer, free of the Shadow King's influence. She approached the altar and, to everyone's shock, knelt. "I come to beg forgiveness," she said, "and to warn you." "Rise," Lyralee commanded gently. "Forgiveness is already given. You weren't yourself. But what warning?" "The shadow market still exists. My family, they're furious about losing their prize. They're gathering others. Not all shadows died with the Shadow King. Some learned from him, want to take his place. Then we'll face them," Kieran said simply. "Together," Lyralee added, helping Ravenna to her feet. "You're free of them now. Stay, if you wish. Find a new path." Ravenna's eyes filled with tears, the first real emotion she'd shown in years. "You would trust me?" "I trust in redemption. The Shadow King taught me that." She smiled. "Besides, every pack needs wolves who understand darkness. You can help us identify threats before they grow." As the celebration continued, Lyralee found herself on the balcony with Kieran, watching their pack mingle with visitors from across the territories. Any regrets? He asked, pulling her against him. None. You? Only one. He turned her to face him. I regret not finding you sooner. All those years you suffered made me who I am. She touched his face gently. Every scar, every moment of pain, every second of loneliness, they all led me here. To you. To this. She gestured at the thriving pack below. I wouldn't change a thing. Even the Shadow King? Especially him. He taught me the most important lesson, that everyone, no matter how lost, can choose to find their way home. A year later, Lorelei stood in the same spot, but now with a swollen belly and Kieran's protective arms around her. Twins, Thessaly had confirmed, one with your white fur, one with his black. Balance, even in birth. They'll be powerful, Kieran murmured against her hair. They'll be loved, she corrected. That's the only power that matters. The shadow market had tried 3 attacks in the past months. All had failed. Word had spread. The Blood Moon Pack was under the protection of a celestial alpha who could turn their own undead armies against them. More importantly, she could offer their bound souls freedom. Many had come seeking that freedom. Former servants of darkness, souls twisted by shadow magic, the lost and broken. Lyrali helped them all, guiding them to either redemption or peaceful rest. The pack is thriving, Kieran said. We've grown from 300 to nearly 1,000. Because you're a good alpha. Fair, strong, protective. Because I have you. A pack is only as strong as its heart, and you're ours. She turned in his arms, wings manifesting to wrap them both in a cocoon of silver feathers. Remember when you first saved me from those ferals? You said I was yours. Possessive and arrogant of me. But true. I was yours, just as you were mine. We just needed time to choose it rather than have it chosen for us. And now we're everything. Mates, equals, partners, parents to be. She kissed him softly. Now we're proof that even the darkest beginning can have the brightest ending. This isn't an ending, he said against her lips. This is a beginning, she finished. The first chapter of a very long story. And it was. Years passed. Their children grew strong and kind, bearing neither the burden of their mother's past nor the weight of their father's reputation. The pack flourished. The balance between life and death held steady. Lyrelei aged gracefully, her white hair eventually matching her wolf's fur, her scars fading to silver lines that caught the light like memories of stars. Kieran's black hair grew streaked with gray, but his crimson eyes never lost their fire when they looked at her. They chose each other, again and again, through battles and peace, through loss and joy, through every dawn and dusk of their very long lives. And when their time finally came, decades later, they crossed together. The savage alpha and his celestial bride, hand in hand as they'd always been. Waiting on the other side were her parents, his mother, the Shadow King, looking peaceful at last, and so many others they'd helped find their way. Worth it? Kieran asked, looking back at the long, full life they'd lived. Every second, Lyrelei confirmed, spreading wings that here, in this place between, were made of pure starlight. They turned together toward whatever came next, still choosing each other with every step, because some loves transcend death itself, and theirs was one of them.